Good Wednesday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for November the 16th. Today, we are finishing up our read through the book of Job. We are reading together in Job chapter 42, and then we'll be concluding with this particular read, and I hope it's been a good read for you. I don't know if you've ever sat down and had the opportunity to read through Job in consecutive order over a set period of time. But if you have not been able to say that you've done that up until today, now you can say that you have. And I hope it's been a good read for you. I know Job is a bit of a tough read, trying to grasp the flow of it, especially if you just kind of open up the book and start reading in a random chapter. That might be a little difficult. So I do hope then that our reading it through consecutively has been helpful to you. Reading here in Job chapter 42, in verse number 1, we're going to see the conclusion of everything. The Lord, for the past 4 chapters, has been speaking to Job and has been really giving Job a very hefty piece of humble pie. Remember, Job in chapter 31 got a little too big for his britches, and he really demanded that he have an audience before God and that God be willing to talk with him concerning the things that he has endured. Elihu then goes and chastises Job and says a lot of true things that Job needed to hear. And then the Lord comes in and he closes the case, basically says, listen, Job, you are talking about things you do not understand. You're talking above your pay grade. You're just not going to be able to comprehend everything that's going on. And you can't fathom the weight of being a just God and of making all these decisions and understanding all the inner workings of things and just about the world in general. It's beyond you, Job. And Job acknowledges that here, beginning in Job chapter 42 and verse number 1, when he says in reply to the Lord, I know that you can do anything, and no plan of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this who conceals my counsel with ignorance? Surely I spoke about things I did not understand, things too wondrous for me to know. You said, listen now, and I will speak. When I question you, you will inform me. I had heard reports about you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore, I reject my words and am sorry for them. I am dust and ashes. After the Lord had finished speaking to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your 2 friends, that's Bildad and Zophar, for you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has. Now take 7 bulls and 7 rams, go to my servant Job, and offer a burnt offering for yourselves. Then my servant Job will pray for you. I will surely accept his prayer and not deal with you as your folly deserves, for you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has. Then Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite went and did as the Lord had told them, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and doubled his previous possessions. All his brothers, sisters, and former acquaintances came to him and dined with him in his house. They sympathized with him and comforted him concerning all the adversity the Lord had brought on him. Each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold earring. So the Lord blessed the last part of Job's life more than the first. He owned 14,000 sheep and goats, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He named his first daughter Jemina, his second Keziah, and his third Keren-Haput. No women as beautiful as Job's daughters could be found in all the lands, and their father granted them an inheritance with their brothers. Job lived 140 years after this and saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. Then Job died, old and full of days. Job 42 and the conclusion of our read through the book of Job. In the opening section of this particular chapter, again, we just see Job. We see Job responding well to chastisement. He was chastised. He was rebuked by God in chapters 38 through 41. And we see the humility of Job in being willing to acknowledge that, because we all know, we've all seen it. We've all probably been guilty of it. We don't always respond the best to chastisement. We don't respond well always whenever we are rebuked or whenever we are corrected in some way. Sometimes whenever that happens, we fight it. We argue, we dig our heels in, and we just deny. And yet that's not what Job does. Job says, okay, I get it. You are infinite in every way. You can do anything. If you make a plan, it's not going to be able to be stopped. You accuse me of speaking about things I didn't understand, and you're right. I did. I spoke about things I did not understand, things too wonders for me to know. You said, hey, listen, and I will speak. I'm going to question you, and you're going to inform me. And here Job says, I heard reports about you. I would read into that, or heard how great you are. But now that my eyes have seen you, remember this was a theophany that took place in 38 through 41, the Lord appearing in the whirlwind. Having seen God, he says, listen, having seen you, having heard what you have said, having considered what you have laid out, I reject my words and I'm sorry for them. I am dust and ashes. Well, what things had Job spoken about that he did not understand? Well, it's just issues of justice and injustice. It was issues of how does the Lord work in this world? Is the Lord purely does he purely bring retribution on people whenever they do things wrong? If somebody suffers, does that mean that is directly a response to sin? I mean, that's how they kind of operated. They operated under that assumption that when you did good things, you would receive good things. Therefore, if you receive good things, you were doing good things. Well, when you do bad things, you would receive bad things. Therefore, if you're receiving bad things, then you've done bad things. Job had received bad things, but now he's understanding, I don't get it. I didn't understand. I was wrong in my estimation of these things because, again, he knew that he was not guilty of anything that would have deserved such punishment from God, the loss of his children, material blessings, physical health, and such. And that must have meant then that his worldview wasn't accurate, that God did not operate according to strict rules of justice. What Job is doing here, again, in his humbled state, is he is acknowledging his lack of knowledge and understanding. It's almost paradoxical. I now know that I don't know and that I do not understand. And here's something I want to take away as well from verses 1 through 6. I don't have to understand. I think that's something that's underlying what Job is saying here. I don't have to understand. Just think about it. Job could have come back and he could have continued to hound God and say, no, even if he acknowledges the truth about these things, he could have continued to say something to the effect of, well, okay, that's fine. Then tell me. You tell me. If I don't understand it, then you tell me what I need to understand. But he doesn't say that here. I believe that implies that he is okay with not understanding. He recognizes his place and understands that as a man, he does not have to understand everything that goes on. Well, then the Lord turns his attention to the friends and he rebukes them pretty sharply. It's very interesting to me, just the way the Lord says all this. He says, you've not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. He says that in verse number 7. He says the same thing again in verse number 8. For you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. What exactly is he referencing there? I'm just not really sure. I'm not sure what part he's referencing there. They spoke untruths about God where Job spoke the truth about God. I'm just not sure. But God did not leave them without the ability to rectify things. But it wasn't going to be them who rectified themselves. It was going to be Job. Job goes and he does as he had told, or Job does offer these sacrifices. Job does pray to God, and God accepts his prayer on their behalf. And then Job goes on to be restored. I don't know if this is necessarily Job just getting paid back for everything he lost, because reality is you don't just get paid back for losing children. If you lost a child, there's There's no amount of other kids that you can have that will make up for that. I think this is just God being God. This is God being a blessing. This is God being just the God who he is. He had blessed him before, and now he's just going to continue to bless him again. Now, granted, his things are more than first. A lot of these things are doubled. His children remain the same. It's just very interesting as well, just to note that he mentions having 7 sons and 3 daughters, and it's his 3 daughters that are named, which I think would be very, very atypical for a writing of this particular time. And yet here is Job referencing, or excuse me, I should say, here's the author, whoever the author is, referencing Job's daughters. He was a blessed man again. And again, I don't think that's necessarily making up for what had been lost, but it's just him getting to enjoy the blessings of his God. He lived 140 years, saw a lot of children. So I guess it would be children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren. So I think that's right. I think he would be able to see great-great-great-great-grandchildren, 3 greats. And that's incredible to think about, that Job would have been able to enjoy his family like that. And then it just ends with, he died old and full of days. Man, had anybody at this point, and anybody since then, had a life as full as his. What an incredible thing to think about everything that he had had up until the point of it being taken away, and then how he endured in that meantime, and then how God blessed him afterwards. Just incredible story. But here's what I want to take away. Here's the main thing I want to take away from just getting to the end of this text. Remember, while there are a lot of lessons that can be learned about dealing with suffering, again, I don't think that's the main point here. The main point is, how does God operate? And wrestling with how God operates in this world. Does he work things according to strict justice? Well, if he did, I'll tell you right now, I would not be as blessed as I am. I know that I can say that very, very certainly, that if God dealt with us according to what we deserve, I would not be where I am today, and I would not have what I have today. It's very unfair in many respects, honestly, and it's crazy to think that life's unfairness actually works to our benefit in many ways. Again, just looking at my own life, I don't deserve what I have. I don't. And yet God is a good God and has blessed me abundantly, and I'm sure you would be able to say the same as well. But here's the thing. Here's the point, though. At the end of the day, with this particular story of Job and what he endured, the adversary was proven wrong. He was proven wrong. Remember, going all the way back to chapters 1 and 2, 1 and 2, what was it? What was the accusation? What did the accuser accuse Job of? He accused Job of only being righteous and godly because of how God had blessed him. Yet everything was taken away. The children, the possessions, the physical health, it was all taken away. And yet Job maintained his integrity. He maintained his faith. Yeah, he had some low points. Yeah, he struggled. Yeah, he wrestled a lot. Yeah, he said some things he shouldn't have said. But his faith was never gone. He never just cursed God to his face. Remember that there's a big difference between doing what his wife encouraged him to do, to curse God and die, and then wrestling and saying things you ought not say. Those are 2 different things. He was proven wrong, Satan was. And God knew that. God knew it. God knew who Job was. And that's why he was okay with allowing him to be stricken as he was. He knew who Job was. And I wonder if we can see anything like that as having happened in our own lives. Maybe we have suffered in a really mighty way, and yet through it all, our faith remains. I wonder if that's the Lord saying, yep, they can go through something really difficult. This servant of mine can really suffer in a great way, but I know that he or she will make it through. If we've ever been in that position, then we can not just sympathize, but empathize with Job. We know what that feels like. Maybe not to the degree, maybe so, I don't know. But at the end of the day, faith remains. And faith is the victory. Victory that overcomes the world, as the song says. Specifically, faith that overcomes the accusations of the evil one. So as we conclude our read through Job 42, let me encourage us all to just be thankful. Be thankful for what we have. And even if we suffer greatly, that does not mean God has abandoned us. Maybe we're being tested, yes. But by God's grace and strength, we too can pass the test as Job did. He was tested, and yet he endured to the end. I appreciate so much you enduring to the end of this particular read through Job. We've been reading Job over the past 42 days. That's 6 weeks we've been reading through Job. And now tomorrow we're going to begin a read through the book of the Proverbs. Proverbs breaks down into a couple different portions. Chapters 1 through 9 are much more of it's got more of a flow to it. Chapters 1 through 9 does. You can see the different subjects that are really being discussed and that are being zeroed in on. But then beginning in chapter 10 is just as my Bible says, the subheading, a collection of Solomon's Proverbs, just random sayings that seem to be general truths that we just need to consider. So as I mentioned before, whenever we read through this, if you want to, as we're reading through Proverbs, I really want to encourage people to interact with me on these particular texts. If there's a particular proverb that stands out to you, please feel free to share it. Identify that proverb and share a little bit about what you gain from having read it and meditated upon it. I'd love to interact with everyone in that way, just to help us to, again, immerse ourselves more in the text, not just to read, not just to hear and read along and then go about our day, but really focus on something that we can take away from the text. And that's our effort that we'll try to do for the Proverbs writings here. Again, we'll be starting off with Proverbs chapter 1 tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. There's a whole lot that can be talked about here within this particular Old Testament writing. Again, thanks for tuning in. We're looking forward to seeing everybody tonight as we get ready for our Bible studies kicking off at 7 p.m. Hope to see you there. And until then, have a great rest of your day, everyone. And we'll be, again, kicking off our read through the